For now, I'd like us to understand that an altar is a metaphor that symbolizes sacrifice. An altar is a metaphor that symbolizes sacrifice. The dialect that spirit beings understand, the dialect that they can relate with, the dialect that they can respond to is the dialect of sacrifice. And as we journey in scriptures, you are going to see how this dialect is used to catch the attention of spirits. It will interest you to know that when we talk about altars, we are using it in the broad sense, not just because as we study, we will differentiate between righteous altars and evil altars. But whether it is a righteous altar or an evil altar, it is a metaphor that is used to symbolize sacrifice, because that's the dialect that spirit beings can understand. And it happens to be that David is well trained in the area of priesthood because his mentor happened to be Samuel the prophet. We're going to study the life of David, and you are going to see his attitude towards the Lord. And then you realize that there was an understanding that he had that gave him the advantage and gave him the ability to move the hand of God even in very critical circumstances and in critical situations. This is the wisdom that David manifested. He was offered everything that was needed. There was a catastrophe in the land. And the catastrophe that hit the land was because the government led by David decided to do something with the authority of the throne that was contrary to prescription. Are you there? It's just like the budget, the 2024 budget has just been passed. I don't know how many of you have taken time to look at the budget. Anyone here, you took some time to look at the budget? Well, I advise you to take some time to look at the budget. Because if our planning and strategy is supposed to be our means of advancing our economy and bringing us out of the waters, then the viability of our budget is a strategic tool to predict whether or not it has the capacity to bring out of the current economic situation. Are you still following me? Or I should leave my economics alone? My wife is the economist. I'm just a layman, but I've worked with figures for long. And if figures have meaning at all, then I assure you, not as a prophet, I assure you by the power of numbers that I've studied, within the environment of the budget, I can tell you, I can predict that nothing of economic advancement will happen this year. Because I've taken a very critical look at the budget. And the budget is not designed to solve any problem in 2024. Now, that budget has been passed. It's now a legal document. It's a legal document that can be used to collect money from Central Bank of Nigeria and disburse according to the prescription of the budget. But because the budget is amiss, the entire land is going to suffer from it because it's an act of government. Are you there? So David used the authority of his throne. There was a policy of government that he initiated that was contrary to the will of God. The consequence of that policy was nationwide. So if the devil wants to afflict a people, all he needs to do is to manipulate their government. And their government will come up with policies that, are you there? That will bring them into reproach. So that is what David did. Unfortunately for David, the impact of the number of casualties that resulted from his seemingly innocent policy was so much that he had no justification to give another decree if he doesn't find a means to salvage the situation. Thank God he had a prophet that still had the Lord's ear, Prophet Gad. And Prophet Gad was able to see into the realm of the spirit and saw how that the angel was killing people, plundering people, afflicting people all through the land, and saw that the angel, when he arrived at Onan's threshing floor, he stopped. So he now gave a prophecy to David by reason of the word of wisdom. And say, if you set up an altar in Onan's threshing floor, you will restrain the authority of this angel. So based on that wisdom, they were going to Onan's threshing floor. When they got there, because the man too operated the gift of the discernment of spirit, he saw the angel and he took cover. So when David came, he came out of his hiding place to talk to David. He was willing to give David the threshing floor, willing to even provide oxen for the sacrifice, and probably meat offering, part of his wheat. He wanted to gather unto David so that that sacrifice can be offered. Because everybody was, including himself, they were living in fear of their lives. So if my threshing floor plus some of my bulls and wheat harvest will stop this plague, then I am most delighted to be a donor of such sort to end the plague that is in the land. And David, even though the situation was critical, there was pressure on government. There were several things he learned about priesthood that played out in the way he went about fulfilling the instruction that came from the prophet. He knew that the dialect that spirit beings can understand is the dialect of sacrifice. So even though it was offered to him for free, he knew that if he offers what was given to him for free, it will have no vocabulary in the realm of the spirit. Are you there? It will sound like wind, without voice, without demand, without petition. He said, no, even though I appreciate your generosity, I will not offer unto God that which cost me nothing. So it means David has a spiritual knowledge, and he knows that it is only that which is sacrificial that will be able to attract the attention of a spirit being. An altar, therefore, this is an elementary definition. We will still give many definitions as we journey. But this definition will set the stage for understanding the protocols as we advance in the study. And it will be easy for you to comprehend the scriptures that will be bringing forth in this regard. So an altar is a metaphor that depicts sacrifice. And sacrifice is the dialect that spirits understand. All right, come with me again, still studying the life of David. I'm trying to bring perspective, trying to set the coordinates. In 2 Samuel chapter 23, I will read from verse number 15. Still talking about David's understanding of the subject of sacrifice. David's understanding of the subject of sacrifice. And David longed and said, oh, that one would give me drink of the water of the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate. And the three mighty men brake through the host of the Philistines and drew water out of the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, and took it and brought it to David. Nevertheless, he would not drink thereof, but poured it out unto the Lord. Let's get his comment. And he said, be it far from me, O Lord, that I should do this. Is not this, he's talking about the water. Is not this water the blood of men that went in jeopardy of their lives? Therefore, he will not drink it. You know, I told you David was trained by a prophet. He longed for water to drink. That was his village, the well that he drank when he was a small boy. Now, because of political crisis, the Philistines were now in occupation of his village, and the well that he drank was no longer accessible. And David longed. And he said, oh, that one will give me drink of the water of Bethlehem. It was a legitimate longing. What I drank when I was a small boy, is it possible for me to drink it again? It was a personal longing. It was not giving the soldiers marching orders. And the soldiers took his personal longing to become marching orders. It will interest you to know that it takes 5 years to train a legionnaire. A legionnaire is one that is competent in the use of the sword and the shield, which is a basic attack and defense equipment. It takes 5 years to train one that knows how to coordinate with sword and shield effectively. But it happens to be that the period that David was running away from Saul, which is the time that he assumed occupation of Cave Adullam, was 12 years. So in these 12 years, they were training for battle, and they had no opportunity for a fight. So when they heard the longing from David, they converted it to be a battle cry. Hallelujah. When they, I don't want to describe that fight because it's difficult to even imagine it. 3 guys going against 2,000, because that's what a garrison is. And as the 3 guys are fighting, then the 2 guys will now be blocking one guy. He will now fetch water. And the moment he holds that water, I can no longer fight effectively because it will spill it. How they accomplished, I don't know how they did it, but they brought the water to David. David cried out and said, it is an abomination for him to drink that water, because in the eyes of the Spirit, are you there? That water has been transformed. The quality of the value of that water is equivalent to the effort that was put into it to get it. So David called that water blood. May your eyes be open to see where normal mundane things take on a different value because of what was put in to secure it. That's the reason why. You know, are you here? You are not with me. You are not following me. Once upon a time, someone that was into prostitution business brought money to church. You don't want to hear me. The value of that money is equivalent to the effort that was used to get it. Are you there? So the Lord cannot receive that one because the value it has is only a demonic altar that can receive that offering. You are not with. It's still money. Oh my God. It's still money. But you see, prophetically, the effort that was put in to get it now determines its value. As we go on in the lecture, after I finish doing definition of terms, which will take a few days, then we'll now start talking about a righteous altar. That's when you will discover that someone that got money, big money from prostitution, cannot put it on a righteous altar. But wait, let's get there first. Then you'll find out, hallelujah. Now, the question I want you to ask yourself and answer is, what if David drank it, that water? Okay, you are not. You don't think that way. You only think one way. I am asking you now, what if David drank that water? I hope you know. Even God doesn't accept human sacrifice. You don't know that one. The man on the console, find out from my online audience, because they normally say that I should not stop sermons because of the congregation. Ask them if they know that God will not accept human sacrifice. Ask them first. When you give me the feedback, then I'll continue. I will know that I'm no longer preaching to you. It's them that I'm preaching. Abraham was to sacrifice his son to God. And at some point, God stopped Abraham from the actual sacrifice. When he saw that in Abraham's heart, he had released the boy. So in between the time the boy was released from his heart and the actual sacrifice took place, God says, stop. I've received the offering from your heart. But because I don't sponsor, my altar is not an evil altar. It's not capable of taking human blood. So the aspect of that your sacrifice that requires the actual blood, let's leave that one out. On the strength of that which Abraham did, God blessed him. Are you there? So in our journey too, we are going to see the altar of the human heart. Then I will show you that this human life, in order for you to live this human life adequately, you live it by altars. There are many altars that must be built in your space. Give me time. Let's do the basic definition, the broad strokes explanation, then we'll now build it into human life. Are you with me? And the day you now sleep with a woman that is not your wife, you will discover that you have raised an altar. And demons will make reference to that act until that position is adequately restituted. There are so many. In fact, the issue of altars are not just natural in the realm of the natural. I'll take you to the book of Revelation and we'll do a little exploration. And you will see that even heaven operates by altars. I will show you a few altars in heaven. Take one and explain that one and how that altar operates and why heaven is like this. Then you will study the remaining. So heaven and earth operate by altars. The man said, be it far from me to do this. Is not this the blood of men that jeopardize their lives? This is the blood of men that jeopardize their life. He poured it onto the Lord as a libation. Why? Because he knows that the spirit realm understands the language of what? Sacrifice. If you got it to that point, I will take you again just one step further. Just one step further. And this one step further it will require us to jump into 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2. It says, wherefore, laying aside all malice and all guile and all hypocrisies and envies and all evil speakings, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. And if so be that ye have tasted that the Lord is gracious, to whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed by men, but chosen of God and precious. Then he hits the point. This is a revelation. It says, ye, lively stones. And guess who is talking? It's Peter. The one that got the revelation of Jesus, and on the account of that revelation that he got, Jesus called him stone. Later, he had gotten more insight and he discovered that God's spiritual building that he's building happens to be a holy priesthood, and the material he uses for the building are lively stones. So he could say with boldness that we are lively stones. Don't have time to probe the word lively in that presentation because the emphasis is not God's building. So when we talk about God's building, we are going to probe into the word lively. And when we probe into the word lively, you will now discover that one of the presentations of the word lively is precious stone. So this building that we are talking about is not built by stones that came from the quarry site, sedimentary rocks. This one is built by precious stone. When we talk about God's building, we'll need to do a very lengthy module on the God of diversity. Then you find out that I am different from you by constitution, by conformation, because if you are building and you are not using, if you are using blocks, the blocks are the same size, relatively, all right? So it's either you put full block, or you put half block, or you put quarter block, because the blocks are the same size. The patterns in which the blocks are going to be cut to fit into the building are already known patterns. But if you are using stone to build, no stone is the same size. No destiny is the same size. No purpose is the same size. Now, the kind of building that God builds gives room for the understanding of specificities. Because the kind of design that you can do when building with stone is dependent on the stone's size and the stone's shape. It is a very complex process to build with stone. So when we talk about God's building, and God's building is the church,